everybody. In this video, I will tell you a thing or two about creating APIs within NoCode-X. So I'll tell you the basics. I won't dive in too deeply because the video will take way too long. Let's start. So at some point in time, you might want to be able to communicate to other machines or be able to have your application communicate to other applications. And this is really where APIs come in. APIs allow machines to communicate with each other in a way that they understand each other. And building APIs within NoCode-X is really, really simple. So I want to show you with the help of an example. Within this video, I will build a small API that allows me to fetch data from my database, and more specifically, it will allow me to fetch data of soccer teams from my database full of soccer teams. So let's dive in. First thing you need to do is locate the API button in the site navigation, and when you hit it, you get a pop-up showing you all the APIs within your application at the moment. So as you can see, I have no APIs in my application, so I can use this button to create a new one. And then I get the second question: do you want to create an API from scratch, or do you want to use a data format to generate an API for you? So for sake of this video, I will just keep it simple and I will create an API from scratch. In other videos, I will explain how you can generate APIs using your data format that you have already created. So in this video, I want to get the soccer team data from my database. So I'll call this API get soccer teams. When I hit the create button, my API will be created and I can edit it further. So I can enter the edit API screen where I can still change the name if I made a mistake. I can add a description to this API to make it easy to understand at later points in time what this API actually does. And then I can add an icon to this API to make it recognizable within NoCode-X. And now this is the interesting part. I can choose the method which will be used to access this API. These are HTTP methods, and NoCode-X supports 4 of the HTTP methods available. We support the get, the put, the post, and the delete. And most of the time when we're talking about APIs, the get method is being used to fetch data from an API. The post method is being used to enable creation of data through an API. The put method is being used to enable updating data through an API, and the delete method is being used to enable deletion of data through an API. So in this case, I want to fetch data from my database, so I use the get method. And then I can choose an endpoint for my API, which I am free to choose whichever endpoint that I want, but I have to make sure that this endpoint is unique within my application. So I have to think a little bit about the endpoints that I choose for my APIs. So in this case, I'll choose soccer team /list, which is the endpoint for my API. Now, if I hit the save button, and I would call the API as it is created right now. Okay. I would receive a 404 error. And the reason behind this is that this API actually does nothing at this moment. It's just an empty shell. It exposes actually nothing. But what I can do to make it do what I want it to do is I can add an action to this API. So I can link an action to this API, and within that action I can define some logic that I want to happen when this API is being called. So I have this piece of the edit screen right here, which allows you to link an action to the on API call trigger, which actually means that every action that I link to this trigger will be executed every time this API is being called. So I can choose one of the actions that I have inside my application, or I can create a new action by clicking the Create Action button right here. So I'll go ahead and do that. So by clicking this, as you can see, a new action popped up. It is still unnamed at this moment, and I can start editing it by clicking the Edit button of this action. So this opens up the action editor where I can start defining my logic. So I'll go quickly through this. If you want to know more about the action editors, we have other videos on that, so please watch those. But let's just go quickly through this. So what I want to do is fetch data from my database. So I can use get page of data function. I drag and drop it into place. I connect it with the start block. And for the properties of the get page of data function, I choose that I want to get data from the data format soccer team. I want to get the first page, and I want to get 10 soccer teams per page. I do not want to add filters or other filters or attributes, or I do not want to adjust the sorting mechanism. And I want to say this, well, this, whatever page I get from the database, I call it result in my memory at the moment. And then, of course, I want to add this result as an API response. So I can just choose the set API response function, add it to the action, choose the option, the object that I want to expose, and I choose the result page that I've just fetched from my database. So this results in, whenever I call now my API, I get a JSON with all the data from my database. Now this JSON has a little bit of too much data because I get the default fields from NoCode-X as well. So if you want to keep that, fine. But if you want to limit yourself to just exposing the body within your data, just like you would see it in NoCode-X, you can do that easily as well. So we have a function that allows you to map to body, or it's called map to body, which actually maps all the data that you fetch from your database to exactly the fields that you've defined within your data format, and none of the default fields within NoCode-X. So what you do is you drag it in between the get page of data and the set API response, and you choose the result as the list of data that you want to map, and you just name it result again. So it enters map of body, it's being mapped to just the bodies only, and then the output is result again, and this is being used in set API response. So if you now check your API, you call it, you have a much leaner version of your API only containing the data which is actually in your database, plus the ID, of course, because that's an important part of your data. So that's really it for creating an API. There's really not much to it in NoCode-X. So please, if you want to know more about NoCode-X, please keep watching these videos. I'll be making much more of them. Please watch our LinkedIn page or join us on Discord. And yeah, let's keep creating great stuff with NoCode-X. Bye, guys.